Started talking about addiction, let's go there. Addictions, everything from, well, I mean, we were talking about it just before, every addiction you can think of, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's sexual, whether it's addicted to being on the computer, addicted to any behavior. You say that this is all part of the problem.
Yeah, and part of my approach in writing this book was I said we live in an addictive environment. Are we more addicted today than we have ever been? And indeed the answer to that is yes. And why is that the case? Well, it's because we have more things to become addicted to. An addiction basically comes from something that you derive pleasure from. It makes you feel good. So anything that makes you feel good can indeed become addictive. And right now we're surrounded by millions, not just thousands, but millions of potential consumer items, items on the internet, we have gambling, we have all these things that can lure us into an addiction. So the thing that sets us up for addiction, Garth, and this is really important, is really depression. People with depression are far more likely to develop addictions than others.
What's the neural response?
Well, what's happening is essentially we have this balancing act going on in our brain where we're trying to balance out our neurotransmitters, the two key ones being dopamine and serotonin. And so where addiction is concerned, and I'm speaking very generally here, what's happening is when you derive pleasure from something, you're getting a rush from your dopamine. That's your motivation. That's your euphoria feeling.
That's your yes factor.
That's it. And then where serotonin is concerned, that's you're feeling satisfied, sated, or that you're feeling joy and satisfaction. That's serotonin. And so what's happening today is we hear a lot of people are, serotonin deficient, so they're taking antidepressants. And unfortunately, of course, these antidepressants are showing that they don't work. And not only are they not working for 2 out of 3 people taking them, they're actually causing very debilitating side effects. So the answers are not coming from conventional mainstream, the medical establishment. We need to start exploring other options, and that's why nutrition is so key, because when in exploring nutrition will help balance these neurotransmitters naturally so people can feel joy, without having to seek out addictions.
So you frustrate me.
I do what?
You frustrate me. Because you say the word nutrition. Mm-hmm. And then I think automatically of the nutritional store that I've got to walk into, that nobody really is up to speed on what I need to do, that I'm feeling this way, or I know I've a loved one or a dear friend is feeling the same way, and now I'm sending him in to try and figure out this waters by themselves. And then they go in and they're going to self-diagnose with the amount of information that they have, which is probably not much more than they walked in with. And then try this, or listen to somebody at a health food store who's very well-intentioned, but may not have any grasp of exactly this, because usually they have a certain bias to it.
And I think that's what is frustrating, absolutely. There's a cornucopia of choices out there, whether you're shopping in Canada or in particular in the United States, where walking into a health food store is far more like walking into a candy store. You just have thousands of potential vitamins to choose from.
Correct.
So that's why I think fundamentally I like dealing with 3 square meals to start with, Garth, because I don't see how any supplement's going to work unless you're doing 3 square meals to begin with. And I think even people who are on a very limited budget, that's a realistic goal right there. Because I can't tell a single mother with children to buy supplements. I can't expect her to be able to do that. But I do expect her to eat 3 square meals, because that's how the human body is designed.
Well, to your point, there's the Breakfast for Kids program at schools. So many children, especially within whoever's listening to this, every county, every community, every city has a problem where kids are coming to school with no breakfast.
Right.
And let me also I'm going to get on a bit of a soapbox here, that our prisoners in the penitentiaries are given grade A apples, the top of the most quality apples ever. But in an inner city school, they can't even afford C grade apples, the stuff that you and I would it's all punky, and that's the way our government operates. Mm-hmm. The kids that we want to learn so they don't end up in jail, we don't help them get the proper nutrition.
No, or end up with depression, which is what the World Health Organization is saying, that by 2020, depression is going to be the 2nd leading cause of disease in the world. So our children
nobody really
today,
cares. Nobody cares. Honestly,
our children are headed for disaster right now.
Well, Pam, don't you get that feeling?
Well,
Don't you get the feeling like,
you
write this book?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, let me tell you how embarrassing the situation is for the current caretakers of our children in the school systems, those who are feeding our children. 100 years ago, I have a historic book on school feeding. They knew more about how to feed children 100 years ago in schools than they do today.
What do you mean?
They knew that if a child were from a low-income family, that the parents or the single mom, for instance, was less likely to buy butter and meat than somebody from a well-to-do family.
Because it's more expensive.
Back then, they even knew that children at school needed to replenish their nutrients by feeding children meat and butter, rather than canned vegetables or margarine, for instance. They needed the nutrient-dense foods to help feed the child's brain. So when a child had symptoms, when a child had learning or behavior problems, this is 100 years ago, Garth, they took that child and they put that child in a special school for 3 months, and the goal of that school was to feed the child into wellness, nourish the child into wellness. Today, they're medicating children left, right, and center with drugs that are actually damaging the brain. And this is knowledge that our ancestors knew. They knew that these children were having behavioral learning disabilities because they were simply malnourished. But today, the drug companies are there brainwashing people into thinking that the drugs are the answer when indeed they are not. I mean, these drugs are designed to damage the brain. If you read the book, Dr. Peter Breggin, Medication Madness, he says right in there as a psychiatrist, these drugs damage an already damaged brain. They're not helping people, Garth, and so I think we have no choice but to look for the alternatives.
When we come back, we'll talk about a seminar that you're holding in London, Ontario. Yes, it's a bit of a drive. I plan to be there. I want to help kids with ADD, ADHD. I even think of myself sometimes when I can't focus, and I'm realizing now that I haven't really given the proper fuel to this huge head of mine. Anyways, we'll be back with more First Take Live. Stay with us. Welcome back to First Take Live. Well, we're talking a little bit about how to fix the broken brain for those of you that are having issues perhaps with mental disorders, mental health issues. And let's face it, you're stuck. You're being medicated. You're being sought after by the drug companies, what I wanted to say. But I guess what you're seeking information, you're seeking answers, and yet does it seem just like a circle? I'm not going to make I just don't want to sort of say that's the way your life is. But for so many people I know in my personal life, that's kind of what it is, that they can't seem to break that cycle. No,
it's a very difficult cycle to emerge yourself out of, because like I said, there are very few people who actually know about nutrition today. And
well, but you think we would know about it because, we've been doing tons of shows on it, Pam. I mean, people would say we talk about it, and we all know vitamins are important now. Finally, the doctors can say that, and we know that nutrition, but we are completely, well, when you think about it, a homemade meal today is something that's taken out of a box, heated in a microwave, and served, compared to when my grandmother used to look after me.
Right, and and when surveys were done back in the early 1950s, when the rise of the packaged food industry began, back then women who were surveyed said that they loved cooking meals from scratch, and they made time for cooking meals from scratch. It didn't matter if they were working 9 to 5, so it was a huge priority for women in particular back in that era. But today it's a lost science in a sense, and really it's a survival skill to be able to learn how to cook meals from scratch.
Actually we don't teach home ec